everyone, and welcome to Batsman Studio. I'm Charles Batsman. In this video we will be painting a moonscape. So it's going to be an image of the 1969 moon landing. So it should be really out of this world, amazing, and just really fun to paint. So I'm excited about painting it, and I hope you will be excited by watching it, and you'll try it yourself. So sit back and relax, and let's start this new video from Batsman Studio. So before we start painting, I need my brushes. Just can't find where they are. Oh, there it is. Excuse me 1 second. Ah, so hard to grab it. So here I have my drawing laid out. As you can see, very simple, very non-detailed or anything. So we have everything placed. So when you draw something and you're about to paint it, you want to place everything, very simply in just the big basic shapes, just around. So I have my astronaut, my flag, and the moon in space. These are my 4 elements that I'm going to start with. And I also have my reference, as you can see. So I have everything neatly laid out. And I have my drawing done very simply. So we're going to start with the large basic shape first. So now we're going to start with the background first, which is space. So we're going to create this beautiful background of deep black. So I mixed a little bit of black with blue to create a real sense of deep space. So we're just going to beautifully put that in there, just as a large shape. So that's going to be our background. And like I said, it's always good to start from the back forward. That way you're pulling out your subject matter, basically. And we're going to keep it pretty opaque. I want this to have like a lot of depth. And you can see it's dripping a little bit, but that's okay. That happens. So I'm just going to continue painting the background. And you just want to continue until it's completely painted. And until you have a solid background. And remember, this is acrylic, so it dries fairly quickly. So if I do want to go back and I want to go over it again, I can do so in a few minutes, actually. It dries very quickly. So I may want to do that just to strengthen the background. So this becomes a solid wall of space, basically. We want to give that illusion that it's very dark and very formidable. So we have this background right up to our horizon line. And I could even go back, because right now, at this moment, it is drying. So there's still areas that are still drying, and within a few minutes it'll be dry. So now we're going to start with the moon. So this large area right here. We're going to omit painting the astronaut yet, because he's in the almost immediate foreground, and the flag. So any large spaces you want to tackle first before you encounter all the small spaces. So you want to work large to small. So start with the giant, large masses first, and then work your way lower. So now we're going to mix a nice grayish color for the moon. And from what I could see on the moon, it's kind of a bluish, we call it cool color, but lighter than space, of course. So again, very simply, you just want to paint in the background and take your time. Don't rush it. And starting with the immediate background, just start painting in the moon. And as you can see, I'm still avoiding the astronaut and the flag. So all of this is background. And background is going to be slightly darker than foreground. So I start with a darker background. And as I get closer to foreground, I'm just going to lighten it up a little bit. It'll be a gradation, as we call it. And just cleaning up the horizon line a little bit. And you can see it's starting to pull forward, which is what we want. So now I'm going to work with close to the middle ground, which is right here, and that's going to be slightly lighter than what I just painted. So as it gets a little lighter, but not by much, just slightly, it's going to have a sense of distance. As I explained in my perspective video, this is part of perspective. It's what we call aerial perspective. It just shows the distance going back in terms of color. And artists have known about aerial perspective for a very long time. It was rediscovered in the Renaissance, but it's a beautiful effect. And now I have this large area in the foreground. So I'm going to start with a very light color for that. And as you can see, I'm going around very slowly and carefully around the astronaut. And taking my time and making sure that I'm not pretty much setting up an area where he's pretty much cut out of the background. That's my intention. The important thing is that you don't want to rush. Now, being fast when you block in is a very good thing, especially when you're painting outside, because the sun constantly changes outside. But there's a difference between being quick and accurate and just being quick because you feel like you're rushing yourself. You don't want to do that either. So I'm putting the last, basically blocking in areas of the foreground of the moon. And the beautiful thing that it's not just one color I'm using a variety of colors. I'm even putting some yellow in there to push it out a little bit more. And yellow is the brightest color in the spectrum, so if you use it in foreground, it tends to bring things forward optically. So as you can see, I'm almost done with the blocking in of two major areas, the space and the moon. Once I'm done with that, I could start with the astronaut and the flag. And that would be the end of our blocking in area. And shadows would come next. And you can see it's really starting to pull the astronaut out from the background. That's our intention. So now we could start painting in the large areas, what we call the middle tone of our astronaut. So this is just the middle tone. This is just, again, we're still blocking in. So just want to go around. And you see how light I'm painting too. I'm not putting anything very heavy yet. Just enough to give the sense of form and light. So it's going around, and this is all pretty much the same tone for now, until I start adding shadows, which is close to the next step. But you see, now we have a light source. And just a little bit more on his helmet. This is not the darkest dark yet. This is, again, what we call the middle tone, meaning that it's not the darkest and it's not the lightest, it's the middle shadow. So you want to stay away from the very dark yet, but that will come very soon. But you can see it's starting to take shape. And the goal is to cover as much as you can in the beginning. So now I'm still putting in some of the details, such as the beautiful American flag in the background, adding some details to it so it stands out, and just blocking it in, as well as the helmet of the astronaut. Just putting in some of the gradations of shade. And then after I do this is when we can start putting in the very dark shadows, the ones that really make it stand out. And what I say, make it turn, is what we say in art. It's going to make it really have volume and make it turn. So you see I have my middle tone, and I literally blocked in most of the areas, except perhaps the shadow, which I haven't done, a very deep shadow. So now we're going to do that. That's the next step. So now we're going to do very deep shadows now, which to me is one of the most fun things to do, because you know everything is where it should be, and now you can add the part that's really going to make it stand out. And the first shadow that comes to mind is the shadow caused by the astronaut. So you see how deep and dark that shadow is, and I just mixed again a little bit of black with a little bit of yellow. More black than yellow, just to give it more shape and more power. And you can see it's already causing it to give it a three-dimensional quality. He's got more weight, no pun intended, since this is the moon, but there is gravity on the moon, it's just not very strong. And also the shadow from the flag, which I'm going to use artistic license and create a shadow coming in the same direction as it has to. So now we have a light source. And I could use the same mixture I just made just to create like little details, such as some of the rocks on the moon. And fix the horizon line. Or at least adjust it. I can go all around, and this is really fun. You can just like kind of go around and put little details you might have missed. Anything to enhance, the painting. So you want to think like you're enhancing your painting by adding these details. You're adding some sort of illusionary effect to it. So you just want to go all around, remember? Just like I showed in the perspective video. Now we can start adding the shadows on the astronaut. So again, this is going to give him more volume. So just very carefully, you just want to put in like major shadows. Anything to make it turn in space. I don't mean that literally since we're painting the moon, but I mean is make it turn in nature so it feels like it has shape and volume. But you don't want to go everywhere with shadow, just where you see it. Where you see it's enhancing and helping the composition. So just anywhere you see a very dark shadow, I could see one right here on his helmet. And you can see it's already turning. And I see where I neglected to put a middle tone, and I will do it right now. These things happen. Sometimes when you're painting, you see things you didn't see before. You just correct, which is what I'm doing right now. So you can see it's starting to turn, this is what we want. You want that illusionary effect. So now I'm adding just some small details and some small details on his uniform and on the background. And even some details on the American flag. I'm just putting in some of the small beautiful details that I neglected doing before, just to make it stand out a little bit more, and it's very fun to do. So I switched from a smaller brush just to add these little details, so once you're done with a big brush, you could switch and move to a smaller brush. And now I can start putting details on the astronaut himself, such as on his helmet, etc. So it becomes more now like a drawing, like I'm redrawing what I drew before. So you just want to go around in any small area very carefully. Just put in any reflections in his helmet, you could put that in as well. But the object is to make it turn, to give it volume and form, etc. And I could add details to his gloves. Anywhere where I feel needs to be added, just go around. Remember, you don't want to focus on one area, you want to go around your painting, around your drawing. Make sure everything is in harmony and everything is working. Just don't rely on one thing to work. It all has to work together. So we're close to finishing and putting the finishing details in our painting. So now I'm just adding the small details on his suit, very minutely, using a very round brush, just to give it more like volume. So now I'm adding just the small details before I call it finished. So at this point you just want to kind of go around and see anything that you might have missed, any small areas. And as you can see, I'm darkening the space a little bit more just to give it more of a solidity. And so any little detail that you might want to work on, it's a good time to do it once everything is working. And you can just go back and solidify areas. So, and I could even work on the moon a little bit at this point, just to give it more power and to make the astronaut stand out a little bit more. To make him silhouette against the background. So, and it's a good time for blending as well. Now it's easier, in my opinion, to blend with oil since it takes longer to dry. But you could still blend with acrylic in a certain way, not the same way. And again, you're just going around. Anything you might see. This is why it's good to step back. Step back and look at your painting at this point, because once you step back, you could see a little bit more if you've made a mistake, if you feel like something is omitted that shouldn't be omitted. Something that may not be a certain color which shouldn't be, so you don't want to be overcritical, but you do want to make sure everything is working the way it should be working, the way you want it to work, and that your message is getting across. So lastly, putting in anything that I might have omitted. So I'm going around and looking at areas that I haven't painted yet. Such as here, I can see that there's areas here. I'm going to keep this painting very loose, very painterly, so I'm not going to go too overboard with details. But if I wanted to, I could keep working on it. But my intention is just to demonstrate, so I'm going to keep it very loose, but put enough so that my painting shows what it's supposed to show and has volume and solidity, and it has a sense of space and perspective. Those are my intentions at the moment. And I could go back and I see that perhaps on his shoulder this could be a little darker, so again, you just go back and you sharpen areas at this point. Any areas that need to be sharpened. And lastly, working on the foreground. So I'm covering up as much area as I can. Just so it has a sense of distance. And I could even strengthen the shadow in the foreground, shadow caused by the astronaut. Let's go back and clean that up a little bit.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
And here we have our finished moon landing painting. Well, I hope you all enjoyed that lesson from Bassman Studio. Remember, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe to my channel. Also, any questions or comments, please leave them in the comment section below, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. Also, check out my workshop on Masterpiece Art School. I'll leave a link in the description below. It's a great workshop where I go over everything from portrait to landscape painting. So check it out. It's really great. And remember, go out there, create great work. Don't be afraid. And I'll see you next time on Bassman Studio. Have an amazing creative day, everyone.